My wife laughed. You really think I will be with you for long? You are just temporal, and I will soon replace you. She said this in front of her friends and my family. I felt embarrassed and heartbroken because I had devoted my whole life to make sure she's very happy all the time. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Ella Payne from Texas. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I used to think that love, the real kind, the patient, enduring, unglamorous kind, was enough to hold two people together. That if I just loved her hard enough, stayed loyal, worked tirelessly, remembered the little things, she'd always see the man who chose her when she had nothing. My name's Chris, and for 10 years, my identity had been tightly woven into one role: husband. I wasn't flashy, wasn't loud. I was the type who'd rather fix the sink quietly than post about it online. Laura, on the other hand, was the light in every room. Loud laughter, sharp tongue, always dressed like life was one big casting call. We were opposites, sure, but I used to believe we balanced each other. She brought the chaos, I brought the calm. That's what I told myself, anyway. But on the night of our 10th wedding anniversary, in front of everyone I loved and respected, Laura made it very clear. She didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a placeholder. The evening had been my idea, something elegant but intimate. I'd reserved a private dining space at our favorite Italian place downtown, ordered custom menus with our names printed on them, even had a small string quartet playing softly in the background. My parents were there, along with hers, and a few of our closest friends. Well, my friends were close. Most of hers were new faces, young, sleek, mostly women who looked like they spoke in hashtags. Still, I didn't complain. She seemed happy, and that had always been my North Star. Laura wore a tight red dress that made her the center of every camera shot, and she loved every second of it. We toasted with champagne, cut into a heart-shaped cake, and then came the moment I'd been planning for weeks. I stood up to make a speech. I thanked everyone for coming, spoke about our journey, how we met at a bookstore, how we struggled through our early years, how we had no furniture except for a futon and a coffee table I found on the curb. People laughed warmly. I turned to her, glass raised, and said, "To the woman who made me believe in building a life from scratch. Here's to 10 more years, and then 10 more after that." I reached for her hand. She pulled it back. Laura laughed, sharp, theatrical. "You really think I'll be with you for that long?" she said, grinning. "You're just temporary, babe. Sooner or later, I'll replace you." Her friends cackled like it was the funniest joke they'd heard all year. My mother gasped softly. My father's face tightened. Even the waiter paused mid-pour. I looked at her, stunned. She kept smiling, like she'd said something clever instead of cruel. "Kidding," she added lazily, sipping her wine. "You're so sensitive." The laughter around the table didn't erase the sting. If anything, it buried it deeper. I forced a smile. I'd mastered that skill over the years, and sat back down, heart pounding against my ribs like a warning bell. My father leaned over and whispered, "You all right?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I felt like someone had poured ice water down my spine. All the work, all the effort, and this was how she saw me? A temporary fixture? A man to be upgraded from? That night, we rode home in silence. I drove. She scrolled through her phone, probably reliving the moment through Instagram stories or texting her friends about how hilarious she was. When we got home, she went straight to the bedroom and turned on some reality show. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the remnants of the cake box I'd paid extra to have delivered. It read, "Forever starts now." I scraped it into the trash. I wanted to believe she didn't mean it, that maybe she had too much wine, that the pressure of the evening made her say something thoughtless. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't new. It was just the first time she'd said it out loud, in public. Over the years, I'd noticed the shift, how she rolled her eyes when I talked about work, how she compared me to more ambitious husbands of her friends, how she talked more about what she deserved than what we were building. I just didn't want to admit it, because admitting it meant I had failed. That the life I fought so hard to keep intact was already falling apart behind the curtains. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, humming. I sat across from her, studying her face, trying to find some trace of guilt or awareness. There was none. "You're quiet today," she said casually. "Didn't sleep well?" I nodded again. "You were joking last night, right?" I asked. She shrugged. "Don't be dramatic, Chris." Everyone laughed. She took a bite of toast, then added, "Honestly, you make everything so heavy. It's exhausting." That word, exhausting, sat with me for the rest of the day. It was the kind of word people used when they were looking for a reason to walk away. The kind of word people used when they'd already emotionally left the relationship, but hadn't bothered to take their things with them yet. For the first time in our marriage, I found myself wondering who I had really married. Was it always this way? Was I just blind, or had she truly changed? And the worst question of all, what did it say about me that I stayed? I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew something had shifted inside me that night. I'd spent 10 years chasing her happiness like it was a moving target, thinking if I just aimed better, worked harder, I'd finally hit the mark. But now I was starting to realize, maybe the target was never meant to be caught. Maybe she didn't want to be happy. Maybe she just wanted to win. And people like that, they never stop playing games. I wish I could say things got better after that night, that maybe we laughed it off, or at least talked it through like two people who once promised to be each other's forever. But that would be a lie. What really happened was silence. The slow, bitter kind that doesn't scream or fight, just lingers in the air like smoke from a fire that's already done burning. Something between us shifted after the anniversary dinner, but not in a way that could be patched. I stopped asking where she was going at night. She stopped pretending to care that I noticed she was gone. The space between us wasn't empty. It was crowded with everything we didn't say. And I felt it every time I walked past her in the hallway. Every time she brushed past me like I was furniture instead of a man. It started with small things. The way she turned her phone away from me when she texted. The way she giggled a little too long at messages she wouldn't let me see. Then came the late nights. First, she said it was girl dinners, then a new project, and eventually she just stopped offering excuses altogether. One night she came home wearing heels I'd never seen before, stumbling slightly, lipstick smeared. I asked if she was okay. She looked at me like I was speaking another language. "Why do you care?" she muttered, kicking off her shoes. I stood in the doorway, heart in my throat, watching the woman I loved unravel in front of me, and I couldn't stop it. She didn't want to be stopped. I started noticing things I wish I hadn't. A receipt for a watch, men's, hidden under her purse. An Uber drop-off at a hotel when she said she was having dinner with Rachel. I didn't confront her, not then. Part of me didn't want to hear the confirmation out loud. There's a kind of pain that's heavier when it's spoken, when it becomes real in the air instead of just in your head. So instead, I started documenting. Quietly. I took photos, I saved texts, I made copies of our financial records. I met with a lawyer during my lunch break one day and slid a flash drive across the table like I was making some kind of deal. Just in case, I told him. He nodded, not asking questions. I think he'd seen it all before. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how easily she wore it. Like it was a new coat that fit better than the one I gave her. She started wearing tighter clothes, doing her hair differently, talking about things that didn't include me. One night, I caught her whispering on the balcony. She didn't see me. She was laughing, real, unfiltered laughter, and I realized I hadn't heard that sound in months. Maybe years. It was like watching someone else's girlfriend through a window. When she came back inside, she looked startled for a second. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked. "Long enough," I said and walked away. She didn't follow me. She never did. A friend of ours, well, more hers than mine, named Maria called me one afternoon. We hadn't talked in weeks, maybe months. She sounded hesitant. "Chris, I don't want to stir the pot, but I think you should know. Lara's been spending time with someone. A guy. Young. I think it's serious." I felt a ringing in my ears, but I kept my voice level. "Thanks for telling me." She sighed. "You didn't deserve this. You're a good man." I hung up before I could start crying. I wasn't angry at Maria. I was angry at myself for still needing someone else's confirmation to believe what I already knew. When I finally tried to talk to Lara about it It went as badly as I expected. I waited until we were both home, rare these days, and sat her down. Are you seeing someone else? I asked, voice low, calm. She didn't flinch. She didn't even try to deny it. What if I am? She said, leaning back like this was a game she'd already won. You haven't exactly been thrilling lately, Chris. You're so comfortable. Predictable. She said it like it was a disease. Maybe I just need someone who matches me. Someone exciting. Someone who actually sees me. I remember staring at her then. Not the words, but the way she said them. Like I was a coat she'd outgrown. Like I should be grateful I got to hang in her closet as long as I did. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But I didn't. I just stood up, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking so bad the glass almost slipped. You do what you need to do, I said quietly. But so will I. She didn't ask what that meant. She didn't care. I stopped trying after that. No more checking in, no more effort to connect. She stayed out whenever she wanted. I stopped waiting up. I stopped wondering who she was texting or where she was sleeping. I focused on work, on my routine, on keeping my dignity intact while my marriage collapsed in slow motion. I wasn't stupid. I knew something bigger was coming. I just didn't know when. So I waited. Like a soldier waiting for a battle he didn't start, but knows he has to finish. Then came the night I'll never forget. I came home late. Traffic had been hell, and walked through the door to find her purse on the counter, shoes by the couch. Normal. But when I went to our bedroom, the door was locked. That was not normal. I knocked. Soft laughter from inside. A man's voice. Come on, babe, ignore him. Her voice. He'll get over it. He always does. My blood turned cold. I knocked harder. Silence now. Then music. She turned up the music. I didn't yell. I didn't bang the door. I just stood there for a minute, then walked down the hall, grabbed a pillow from the linen closet, and laid down on the couch. My hands were shaking, but my face was calm. Something inside me had snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her backup plan, her convenience, and I was done being that. So I waited just one more night. Because in the morning, I was going to do what I should have done months ago. The morning after I slept on the couch, I woke up with a stiffness in my back and a clarity in my chest. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't wake up hoping she'd change or looking for scraps of the woman I married. I just woke up done. There's something eerie about that kind of finality. It wasn't anger or heartbreak anymore. It was numbness, the kind that only comes after you've bled everything you can bleed. I sat up slowly, rubbing my neck, and stared down the hallway toward our bedroom. The door was still closed. No sounds. No movement. But I didn't need to hear it to know she wasn't alone in there. I already knew. And more importantly, I no longer cared to know the details. I stood up, quietly grabbed my phone, and walked outside into the morning chill. The air smelled like dew and car exhaust. Just another Thursday in the neighborhood. I sat on the porch steps and called my lawyer. It's time, I said. We're moving forward. He didn't ask questions. We'd already gone over everything weeks ago when I first started collecting the evidence, planning for the fallout. I'd moved the bulk of our shared savings into a protected account under my name only. Perfectly legal, given the prenup and the way our finances were structured. She never noticed. She was too busy playing house with her new boy toy to realize the walls were closing in. When I finally walked back inside, the bedroom door was open. He was gone, probably snuck out before sunrise like the snake he was. Laura was brushing her hair at the vanity, like nothing had happened. She looked at me through the mirror and said, "You should consider sleeping on the couch more often. You don't snore out there." Her voice was light, casual, cruel in the way only someone who knows you deeply can be. I didn't respond. I simply walked past her, opened the drawer on my side of the dresser, and pulled out the envelope. I had printed 2 copies of the divorce papers, one for her to review and one already signed by me. When I handed it to her, she barely glanced at it at first. Then she saw the header, "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage," and her smirk faded. "What the hell is this?" she asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain myself. "You know exactly what it is," I said. "I've already filed. You'll be served formally within the week, but I figured I'd give you the courtesy of seeing it first." Her jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." I raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" She threw the papers on the bed. "This is pathetic. You're pathetic. You can't handle the fact that I want more. No, I said, finally locking eyes with her. I can't handle the fact that you stopped seeing me as a person. I walked away then, not for drama, not to end the conversation, but because there was nothing left to say. She followed me into the kitchen, still fuming. What are you going to do without me, Chris? You've built your whole life around keeping me happy. I paused, turned to her, and said something I never thought I'd have the strength to say. That was my mistake. The days that followed were strange, quiet in a way that felt both peaceful and ominous. She didn't leave right away. Legally, she couldn't, not until the court processed everything. But the energy shifted. She stopped mocking me, stopped speaking to me entirely, really. She still left every night, though now she was less smug about it. Sometimes she didn't come back until morning. Sometimes she didn't come back at all. I didn't ask where she was. I didn't care. I had started sleeping in the guest room. No more couches for me. I reclaimed my dignity in small ways. I cooked for myself. I canceled our joint streaming accounts. I unfollowed her on everything. I was reclaiming space, inch by inch. Then, about 3 weeks after I filed, her little boyfriend vanished. Just like that. She came home one night looking pale and disoriented. She asked if I'd seen him. I hadn't. I didn't even know his name. She tried calling him while standing in the hallway, her voice shaky for the first time. It's going straight to voicemail, she said, half to me, half to herself. I didn't respond. Later, I heard her crying in the bathroom, and for a moment, just one, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The truth came out in pieces. He had taken money, thousands. Jewelry, too. Things she'd bought herself, things I'd once bought for her. I overheard her on the phone with her bank, trying to dispute charges. Her voice sounded small, desperate. I wanted to feel triumphant. I wanted to say, this is what you get. But all I felt was tired. This wasn't revenge. This was reality finally catching up to her. And it wasn't satisfying. It was just sad. A week after he disappeared, she came to me in tears. Real ones this time. I made a mistake, she whispered. He used me. I nodded slowly. Yes, he did. She wiped her face and looked up at me, eyes wide, almost childlike. Can we talk? I shook my head. There's nothing left to talk about, Laura. You burned this bridge. You laughed while you did it. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. I was stupid, she said. I thought he loved me. And I thought you loved me, I said quietly. But we were both wrong. She tried again in the days that followed. Sweet texts. Apologies. Offers to go to counseling. But it was too late. Not because of what she did with him, though that hurt like hell, but because of what she said before it. You're just temporary. That's what stayed with me. That's what told me everything I needed to know. She didn't see me as her partner. She saw me as a placeholder. And I'd rather be alone than invisible in my own home. The final nail in the coffin came when she showed up at my job. I work in IT, quiet office, quiet coworkers. She marched in during lunch hour, wearing sunglasses like she was someone important. Chris, she said, please, just talk to me. I looked at her, then looked around at the faces staring. My boss, my intern, my teammates. I smiled politely. Ma'am, you need to leave. Her face dropped. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't humiliate her. But I didn't save her either. I turned and walked back to my desk. She stood there for a moment, stunned, then finally left. And just like that, the last thread between us was cut. I expected her to cause a scene after I asked her to leave my workplace, but oddly, she didn't. Maybe it was the way I'd said it. Calm, detached, like she was just another stranger disturbing my lunch break. Or maybe reality had finally caught up to her, and for once, she didn't have the energy to pretend she wasn't the villain in the story. Either way, she left without another word. That afternoon, my inbox flooded, not with work emails, but with messages from mutual friends, nosy acquaintances, and even her sister. What's going on between you two? One text read. Another said, I heard she showed up at your job. I didn't respond to any of them. The show was over, and I was no longer a cast member. But word spread fast. Our story, the slow, public breakdown of our marriage, became the kind of gossip people couldn't resist. I knew how this worked. They weren't reaching out because they cared. They were looking for sides to pick, for pieces to pass around in group chats. Some of her friends unfollowed me on social media. Others sent vague, passive-aggressive comments on old photos. Sad to see love fall apart. Hope you're both happy. I ignored it all, but it still stung. There's something humiliating about people watching your heartbreak like it's a soap opera, as if the pain is more palatable when it's happening to someone else. Laura, on the other hand, wasn't handling it as gracefully. That week, she posted a series of dramatic stories on Instagram. Dark quotes about betrayal. Selfies with red, puffy eyes. A photo of an empty wine glass with the caption, "Some things don't last forever, and maybe that's okay." I couldn't believe the audacity. The same woman who mocked me in front of our families, who locked me out of my own bedroom while her lover slept in our bed, was now painting herself as the broken-hearted victim. It was theatrical, delusional, and exactly what I expected. But what really got me was when she shared a clip of a love song we used to dance to in our living room, captioned with, "Funny how some people stop fighting for what matters." I didn't reply. I didn't reach out. I just blocked her. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. One night, maybe 2 weeks after that, I ran into her at the grocery store of all places. I was grabbing dinner for one, frozen pizza, some fruit, nothing fancy, when I heard her voice in the next aisle. My stomach dropped before my brain could even register what was happening. I almost walked away, but something in me froze. She turned the corner, and our eyes met. She looked tired, makeup smeared, eyes red, wearing a hoodie I hadn't seen since college. She smiled, a hesitant, fragile thing. "Chris," she said like it was a prayer. I gave her a nod, polite but distant. "Hope you're well," I said, and turned to walk away. "Wait," she said, taking a few steps toward me. "Can we just talk? Please." I turned back. "About what?" She looked like she might cry. "I know I messed up. I know I ruined everything. But I didn't mean to." I held up a hand. "Stop. Just stop. You meant to. You just didn't think I'd leave. And that's the part that's killing you, isn't it?" She didn't deny it. She just stood there, lips trembling, eyes wide. For the first time, I realized how small she looked. How much of her power came from my willingness to forgive her over and over again. Now that I was gone, she didn't know who she was anymore. When I got back to my car, I sat there for a long time, keys in hand, not moving, not crying, just breathing. It was the first time I'd seen her as human again. Not the monster she became during the last stretch of our marriage, but the broken girl I met years ago, who never really figured out how to love someone without turning them into collateral damage. And still, even with all that clarity, I felt no urge to comfort her. That part of me had gone quiet, maybe forever. In the days that followed, I learned more than I ever wanted to know about how people reveal themselves during a divorce. Her mother called me in tears, begging me to reconsider. "She's just lost right now," she said. "You were the best thing in her life." I didn't disagree, but I told her, kindly but firmly, that my decision wasn't just about Laura cheating. It was about the years leading up to it, the disrespect, the neglect, the way she wore me down until I didn't recognize myself in the mirror. "I gave everything I had," I said, and she threw it away. Not long after, a mutual friend, someone who used to come to our barbecues, someone whose kids I used to help with school projects, pulled me aside at a birthday party. "Be honest," he said. "You still love her?" I took a sip of my drink and looked him dead in the eyes. "I'll always care about the version of her I married. But that version doesn't exist anymore." He nodded slowly. "Damn, that's cold." I shook my head. "No, that's survival." And maybe that's what this whole chapter of my life had become, a slow, painful lesson in survival. I had to unlearn everything I believed about love and loyalty. I had to teach myself that walking away wasn't weakness, that silence can be louder than any scream. That peace, once you taste it, becomes addictive. By the time our court date rolled around, Laura looked like a shell of the woman who used to wear designer heels and mock my boring lifestyle. She wore flats, no makeup. Her hands trembled when she signed the final papers. I felt nothing, just relief. We didn't speak in the hallway. She looked like she wanted to, but I walked past her without turning my head. She'd already taken enough of my time, my forgiveness, my hope. She wasn't getting another moment. When I got home that evening, I stood in the center of the living room, the same room where we used to dance, fight, laugh, and fall apart. I stood there alone, finally free. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Not because someone else completed me. Not because I had won. But because I finally chose myself. It started small, an email. No subject line. Just her name in my inbox like a ghost. I hovered over it for a minute, debating whether to open it. Part of me thought I should delete it without a second glance. Another part, the quieter, curious part, clicked. Inside, it was a simple message. I know I don't deserve to be heard, but I hope you'll read this anyway. I miss you. I miss us. No explanation. No apology. Just a hand reaching out from the wreckage she created, hoping I'd pull her free. I read it twice, maybe 3 times, then closed my laptop and went for a walk. The nerve she had to just waltz back into my mind after setting fire to everything we'd built. I should have deleted it, but I didn't. I let it sit there, unopened again, like a test I'd already passed. A week later, she tried a different route, Maria, the mutual friend who'd been the first to warn me about Lara's affair. We hadn't spoken in a while, but she texted me one evening. Hey, just a heads up, Lara's been asking about you. Says she regrets everything. Wants to talk. Said she's changed. I stared at the message, biting down on the bitterness rising in my chest. Changed. People don't change in weeks. They get scared. They lose comfort. They get lonely. That's what this was. Loneliness dressed up as repentance. I thanked Maria for the heads up and told her I wasn't interested. Still, the message stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. Then came the visit. I was home on a Sunday afternoon, folding laundry and half watching a football game with the volume low when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I assumed it was a delivery. I opened the door, and there she was. Lara, standing there with her hair tucked into a hoodie, holding a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout from the Thai place we used to order from on rainy nights. She smiled like it was normal, like this was some kind of date. Hey, she said softly. Can I come in? For a long second, I didn't say anything. I just stared. She looked thinner, more tired. There were dark circles under her eyes and a kind of desperate hope in her expression that made me feel, not pity, but something close to recognition. I'd seen that look before, on my own face, in the mirror, after months of trying to win her back from the distance she'd put between us. Now, it was her turn to beg, and I wasn't that man anymore. No, I said gently. You can't. Her smile faltered. I thought maybe we could talk. No pressure. I brought your favorite. I glanced at the food, then back at her. That used to be my favorite. Before you shared it with someone else in my house. She winced, the words hitting like I intended them to. She stepped back slightly, arms tightening around the bag. I'm sorry, she said. I know I don't deserve to be forgiven. But I'm trying, Chris. I've been in therapy. I've been looking at my patterns. I realize now that I was chasing things that didn't matter, hurting people who did. I shook my head slowly. You're not wrong. But the apology doesn't undo the disrespect. You weren't just unfaithful. You humiliated me, mocked me, treated me like I was disposable. Her eyes watered. I didn't see it then. I was blind. But I see now. I see what I lost. I took a deep breath. And I see what I found. Peace. Clarity. Boundaries. I stepped back and started closing the door. Goodbye, Lara. She stood there frozen, lips trembling. Chris, please. I closed the door. Inside, my hands were shaking. Not because I was tempted, but because I remembered what it felt like to be so desperate for someone's love that you'd trade your self-respect just to be chosen. That was the old me. The man who bought roses after being insulted, who laughed off public humiliation as a joke, who waited outside his own bedroom while his wife shared it with another man. That man died the morning I handed her the divorce papers. This new version of me had nothing left to give her. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. Long texts, voicemails. One was just the sound of her crying, whispering my name between sobs. Another was a recording of a song we used to slow dance to, probably taken from some old video. I deleted each one by one, with less hesitation each time. My therapist, a woman named Janine I'd been seeing since the separation, told me this was part of the process. When people like Lara lose control, she said, they often try to rewrite history. Don't let her pull you into the fantasy version. Stay anchored in the truth. And that's exactly what I did. But not everyone was on board with my choice to move on. One of Lara's cousins, Mark, called me out publicly at a mutual friend's housewarming party. We were both invited, and I guess he didn't expect me to show up looking healthy, happy, and unattached. You really just tossed her aside, huh? He said, sloshing beer onto his shoes. Didn't even try to work it out? I looked at him calmly. She locked me out of our bedroom while she was with another man. That's not something you work out. That's something you walk away from. He scoffed. Man, women do dumb stuff all the time. You're really gonna throw away a decade over one mistake? I felt the room shift, people listening now, the tension thick. I leaned in. It wasn't one mistake. It was a long, slow erosion of respect, and I refused to live under someone's heel ever again. The fallout from that confrontation spread fast. People finally started understanding that this wasn't about bitterness. It was about survival. I hadn't moved on out of spite. I'd moved on to save myself. Some people respected it. Some didn't. But none of that mattered. Because for the first time in years, I respected myself. A few weeks later, I heard Laura had started seeing someone new. Not like the last guy. This one was more age-appropriate, had a real job, a house, even kids from a previous marriage. I didn't feel jealous. I didn't feel anything. It was just information. Someone else would take on the burden now. Someone else would believe they could fix her. That wasn't my problem anymore. One evening, I ran into Maria again, this time at a coffee shop. We sat for a few minutes, catching up, and eventually she asked, "Do you ever miss her?" I thought about it for a long moment, then answered honestly. Sometimes I miss the person I thought she was. But I don't miss her. Maria nodded, sipping her drink. She still talks about you, you know. I shrugged. She's free to. But talking about me doesn't mean she deserves access to me. That night, I looked around my apartment. The minimalist decor, the neatly folded laundry, the quiet hum of the AC. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was peaceful, and it was honest. No lies, no games. Just me, rebuilding, one quiet decision at a time. It's funny how silence becomes a friend after chaos has been your roommate for too long. In the early days of separation, the quiet had felt suffocating. Too much space, too many echoes of things said and left unsaid. But over time, that silence turned into clarity. It became the calm voice in my head reminding me that peace isn't a luxury, it's a right. I started filling that silence with music I liked, long walks that didn't require explanations, and conversations with myself that no longer ended in self-blame. I began to feel the weight lift, not all at once, but gradually, like thawing after a long winter. One morning, I woke up and realized I had gone a full day without thinking of Laura, without running through the what-ifs or the should-haves. That moment didn't come with fireworks or tears. It came with stillness. And I held on to it like a hard-earned medal. By then, the divorce had been finalized for months, but this mental detachment, was the real closure. Laura had tried a few more times to reach me after her surprise visit. Another email. A handwritten letter left at my door in looping cursive, filled with nostalgia and regret. I didn't open that one either. I tossed it straight into the trash, not because I was cruel, but because I finally understood that reading her words meant letting her back into a space she no longer had a key to. I didn't need another apology. I didn't need more "I was lost" or "you were always the best thing I had." I needed peace. I needed space. I needed to protect the version of myself I had just barely managed to put back together. Not long after, I ran into her one last time, at a mutual friend's wedding. I hadn't planned on going. I debated it up until the morning of, staring at the RSVP card like it was some kind of emotional landmine. But something in me wanted to prove I could go, not for her, but for myself. I showed up wearing a navy suit, the kind Laura always said made me look too serious. I kept it on anyway. I mingled, laughed, danced a little with friends I hadn't seen in years. Then I saw her, across the reception hall, standing near the bar in a champagne-colored dress, laughing too loudly at something someone said. Our eyes met for a moment, and for the first time in our long, messy history, I didn't feel a thing. She approached later in the evening, alone, holding a glass of wine she barely touched. "You look good," she said. I nodded. "Thanks." We stood in silence for a few seconds before she spoke again. "I just wanted to say, I'm happy for you. You look like you're doing well." I gave a small smile. "I am." Her eyes softened. I'm not gonna lie. There are nights I still wonder what would have happened if I'd done things differently. I looked at her carefully. That's something you'll have to live with. She nodded, swallowing hard. Yeah, I guess so. Then she stepped back. Anyway, take care of yourself. I will, I said. And I meant it. I left that wedding with something far better than vindication. I left with confirmation that I'd done the right thing, that my boundaries weren't cruel. They were necessary. I used to think drawing lines meant pushing people away. Now I knew better. Boundaries weren't about keeping people out. They were about keeping yourself intact. And I wasn't going to compromise mine for anyone. Not anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was free. And freedom, I learned, tastes a lot like finally choosing yourself after years of being someone else's doormat. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into things I once put on hold: travel, fitness, reconnecting with family members I drifted from during the toxic years. My sister, who had always silently disapproved of Laura but never said much, told me over dinner, "It's like I have my brother back." And she was right. I'd stopped walking on eggshells. I laughed louder. I stood straighter. I said no when I meant no. I'd stopped apologizing for having needs, for expecting respect. I hadn't just survived my marriage. I had learned from it. And that lesson was worth every sleepless night. There was a moment, a small one, that brought everything full circle. I was at a local bookstore. Yes, the same kind where Laura and I first met all those years ago. I was browsing the nonfiction aisle when a young woman beside me picked up the same book I was reaching for. We both laughed, that awkward stranger laugh, and struck up a conversation. It didn't turn into anything serious, just a nice exchange, some light flirting, the kind that reminded me I still had something to offer. As I left the store, book in hand, I smiled to myself. Not because I was thinking about starting something new, but because I finally felt ready to, if and when I chose. And that, more than anything, told me how far I'd come. I used to wonder if I'd ever feel whole again after her. If I'd always be haunted by the idea that maybe I wasn't good enough, that maybe I was too boring, too predictable, too replaceable. But those thoughts don't have power over me anymore. Because now I know, being steady isn't a flaw. Being loyal, present, honest, those aren't weaknesses. They're strengths. Laura didn't break me. She exposed me. And what she revealed wasn't a man who wasn't enough, but a man who was too much for someone who didn't know what to do with real love. That's not my burden to carry. That's hers. So now, I live by a different compass. One that prioritizes peace over people-pleasing, self-worth over survival, and boundaries over blind loyalty. I still believe in love. I still believe in partnership. But I will never again believe that staying with someone who disrespects you is a form of strength. Walking away when you've had enough, that's the real power. And I found it. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in silence, in solitude, in choosing myself when no one else would. Laura may never fully understand what she lost. And maybe that's part of the closure, knowing that the version of me who once would have forgiven her no longer exists. He's gone. And in his place stands a man who knows what he's worth, what he'll accept, and what he'll never tolerate again. I didn't just leave her. I left the version of myself that tolerated being treated like an afterthought. And I don't plan on going back. Have you ever walked away from someone who treated you like you were temporary? If you've ever had to rebuild yourself piece by piece after betrayal, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. Your journey might be the strength someone else needs right now. If this story hit close to home, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more powerful stories about choosing self-worth over suffering. Your voice matters here. Let it be heard. See you soon in the next story.